To our top story today, more reactions continue to trail the postponement of Nigeria's elections. Citizens in the diaspora have been reacting to INEC's last-minute decision to move the general elections by a week to allow it to resolve certain challenges. Some Nigerians who spoke to Channels Television in New York City in the United States say they were surprised by the turn of events after having followed closely with excitement the build-up to the 4-year exercise. Some, however, believe the electoral umpire's decision is in good interest of the nation.
Anger, because it doesn't really make sense. How can you cancel an election you profess that you are 10 over 10% or 10 over 10 ready? Everything is ready and all of a sudden it's postponed.
To know that we cannot conduct an election on the day it's supposed to be, it's an insult to our constitution, to our people, and to the right to be called a democratic country.
So what's the assurance that next week we're not going to have the same excuses? I mean, I felt so disappointed, and I pray that next week we should have something better.
Well, it's sudden, but I think it's for a good cause. I think they might be able to curb some rigging of the election.
Every Nigerians out there, make sure you're patient, and you make sure you go out next coming Saturday to vote, and you make sure you vote your conscience. Don't take no bribe from nobody, and I'm looking towards seeing youth taking up Nigeria for better tomorrow.
Joining us now is an African Affairs analyst, Yinka Oyeniji, to discuss more about the shift in Nigeria's election. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Big surprise to a lot of people, but let's begin with where you were when you heard the news and what was your reaction?
All right, just before some few minutes to midnight, there were several pieces of news coming in that there was likely to be a postponement. But those who are ardent supporters of this administration quickly debunked it, saying it was fake news and that the elections were going to go on. I mean, for me, it wasn't a surprise. INEC was never ready for these elections in the first place. So at about 2 a.m., I just woke up and looked at my phone, and I saw first from Sahara reporters that the elections had been postponed and that the INEC chairman was going to address the press shortly and stakeholders after that. So it didn't come as no surprise to me at all.
So could this postponement be somehow good news for the country to prepare more, do you think?
All right, my answer is going to be a little interesting. Good news in that even in the bad event, we're going to get to where we need to be. We shouldn't be postponing on the day of elections. People are saying last minute. It wasn't last minute. It was cancelled at about 2 a.m. At about that time, material should have been moving to the centers. At about that time, corpers and electoral officers should have been headed to the polling booths, to be headed to the local governments near the polling booths. So it was cancelled on the day of election. Now, that is landmark. It is sad. It shows how disoriented a government can be, and it shows that we don't even manage information properly. Because before now, we started talking about fake news. We started talking about clamp down on social media. But this INEC and this government had to rely on that same social media to transmit the news at that time. The Minister for Information should start looking at how we will begin to disseminate the correct news in the right manner, lucid, and engaging the citizenry proactively instead of expecting reaction from the citizens and then calling it fake news.
Okay, so what impact could this whole postponement have on the process in general?
It's a zero, okay? If you want to look at the economy, it's a zero. Now, I will explain it in lucid details. I know a lot of people have said that it may be good news. Now, there were people who shifted events they had from last week Saturday because it was suddenly pronounced as election day. They shifted it till this Saturday. There were business engagements, there were hotel reservations and all of that. There were people who traveled to vote. There were people who traveled into Nigeria. There were people who suspended their engagements for this weekend. Now, were those factored in? There were flights that were scheduled and all of that. This is the time, again, a government that is responsible will engage its citizens to say, this is a force majeure situation. For those who are engaged in contracts and all of that, I speak as a lawyer right now. If you're unable to fulfill obligations pertaining to your contract at any point in time due to activities that are beyond your control, now you don't want to be liable for any breach or default, you call it a force majeure situation where all the circumstances were beyond your control. That's what the government should be talking about. There are people who were on the rigs. There are people who needed to get off the rigs. There are people who needed to hand over. There are those in the manufacturing sector all right, who already left last week Saturday out of it, who have to leave this Saturday out of it. Businesses need to know that it's a force majeure situation so that nobody is pressing charges or asking for civil reliefs against anybody. Now, on the process by itself, it dampens whatever excitement or energy, enthusiasm that Nigerians have left. Many of us do not believe in this process, and that is the truth. Now, government has shown once again the need not to take them seriously with respect to elections 2019.
Okay, so, in your opinion, what's the way forward now? How can we fix this?
All right, now, I think for starters, we must be responsible. There's no doubt. I mean, if I was president, that INEC chairman is removed immediately, first of all right? Because if you have so much money was released, the National Assembly did not delay the funding to INEC. The National Assembly took that budget out of the appropriation bill and said, okay, we are going to release funds to INEC. Funds to INEC were released in the last quarter of last year. It wasn't this year, all right? So what reasons would there have been that arose between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. of Saturday that will warrant you to postpone the elections by itself? I shudder to think at what circumstances core members will be right now. Is anybody taking care of them? Are people stranded anywhere right now? We already know some students are stranded. So what we should be doing is investigating the cause for the postponement. Don't make it a habit. How would investors take us seriously if you fix something one day, the next minute, we don't even know? So it means that the next election, I should wait till 7 a.m. before I'm sure that we are going to vote? No, it doesn't make any sense at all. So to restore confidence in the process, the presidency needs to address the nation. The Minister for Information needs to address the nation. INEC needs to come up with better excuses than weather.
The presidency has addressed it now.
He's addressing right now. I've not seen that. And I hope he's going to come up with good excuses. Yeah. Don't talk about weather. My general overseer tells me that you can't be prophesying weather about weather tomorrow, today. Everybody knows that it's not a miracle anymore. We already know it's a March, and we know that we expect rains. Don't say the weather disturbed logistics. Are you kidding me? You gave the business to people who already showed expression of interest and their competency.
Let's talk
so investigate it and round it up nicely and tidy it up and promise that it will not reoccur again. That restores confidence in the system.
This isn't the first time we've seen something like this.
Yes, ma'am.
We saw this last December in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes, ma'am.
And in Nigeria a few years back. Why do you think African elections are plagued with such delays?
It's simple. We don't take our elections seriously. And that's probably because those who are sitting in office don't want to leave anyway. Because the way it is, I remember Vice President Oshiba just said it 3 years ago, that the sitting government has no business campaigning. If you've done well, you don't need to campaign. If you've done well, if you prepared adequately, then you don't need to come up with excuses for postponement. No, it's not done at all. So what we need to do is engage the system. We probably have to look at our constitution. We probably have to look at the Electoral Act as well, with respect to when you can cancel, when you can postpone, and be sure the indices are correct to be determined, to know that, okay, we can go ahead weeks in advance, or we can decide to shelve it all together.
African Affairs Analyst Yinka Oyeneji, it's always interesting getting your thoughts and your opinions.
It's always my pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.